Father's Day to Al and David, who are both in Kittery Point, Maine. So we have a show with no David today, but we're doing all right here. We have some steady hands. We have Nick and Connor helping us out. And I'm so excited to be spending Father's Day together.
As am I.
Some people ask me, how did you end up doing what it is that you do, Robert? And I don't think we're going to have to do much explaining after you watch a bit of the show right here.
He was 5 when I taught him this.
You learned it not from Shel Silverstein, but from
Tom Paxton and Bob Gibson. Sometimes you sing for the money. Sometimes you sing for the show. Sometimes you sing for those dewy-eyed darlings and still mess around, don't you know? One time you sang for the glory, but the glory didn't last very long. Through the haze of the stage, you look back to the days when you used to sing for the song. Sing for the song, boys, just like you did when you stood on that corner and you didn't even feel the cold. Sing for the song, boys, just like you did before all of the cocaine and flashbulbs and bright painted ladies got a hold of your soul.
But you really didn't make too much money,
and you don't put on much of a show. Those dewy-eyed darlings soon will be crying for somebody else, don't you know? And the tune is becoming your burden, and the words all sound twisted and wrong. And the songs that you sell, they don't taste quite as well as when you used to sing for the song. Sing for the song, boys, just like you did when you stood on that corner and you didn't even feel the cold. Sing for the song, boys, just like you did before all of the cocaine and flashbulbs and bright painted ladies got a hold of your soul. Sing for the song, boys, just like you did when you stood on that corner and you didn't even feel the cold. Sing for the song, boys, just like you did before all of the cocaine and flashbulbs and bright painted ladies got a hold of your soul.
Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Thank you.
We've been doing that song for almost 40 years. Next year, we'll been doing that song for 40 years. We've only been doing it for 39 years right now. We'll get even better next year, I think, with it. And this is, of course, Robert Sarazin Blake from the Kitchen Table. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This Kitchen Table goes all over the place. It goes over to Ireland. It goes down to San Francisco. It goes to Texas. So please, wherever you are, wherever your kitchen table is, write in the Facebook comments where it is you're listening from, and our friend there in Buffalo always makes sure we know what is going on as far as the drink of the week. That's right. Kim is our mixologist. She tells us what it is we're drinking each week, and that's right. If everybody's sitting at home, if you're new to the show, now you know all the viewers at home can have the same drink together. We started off in COVID when we had to be alone. Now we can blend a little bit, but we're not drinking blended whiskey here because Kim's suggestion for the drink of the week is your father's favorite drink. And so we have this drink here Dad and I enjoy that I don't know how to pronounce.
Aberfeldy.
And we get this at the duty-free. We are duty-free shoppers, and there's always a reason to go to Canada, and it might just be for the duty-free. This is a 12-year, guaranteed 12. I'm not sure how they make that guarantee or what we would do if we didn't feel like the 12 was there.
They mark the casks.
They mark the cask. 12 years in oak, and this is empty. We're out of that, so we do have a backup in case we need more libation as the show flows. I believe for my 14th birthday, my Aunt Patty Ramsey gave me a notebook that said, "For Robert, the next generation of Blake songwriters." So that's because my father here is a great songwriter. I do a couple of his songs, and he's going to sing one here that he wrote, and I remember learning it from him on sitting on the couch. She was teaching me how to play guitar and learning how to play this song. Did we decide we do it in C or D?
Which one?
Better Deal.
That's D.
D. We'll do it in Better Deal.
And this is a song I wrote. I was headed out from Minneapolis to see my friends here in Seattle, except we're in Bellingham. And as was my wont, I picked up a hitchhiker. And that's what this story is about. This is also my cousin Joan's favorite song.
We hope that Joan is listening today from up north at the lake there in Minnesota.
Up north there at the lake, yeah.
We hope her daughter, my cousin Sarah, may be listening from the Twin Cities. And hello. Oh, we want to let you know that if you're enjoying the show, you can invite your family members to watch the show too. Maybe invite your father, your son, your daughter, your mother. It's a family party here.
It was the middle of the day on a 2-lane road. Was making my way out west, passing by towns and farmyards, one as serene as the rest. There it was, I saw him, standing there flagging his thumb, watching the cars passing by, watching them all move on. So I pulled over and picked him up. His movements, they were slow. He got in the cab and I asked him how far he wanted to go. Wiped his nose with his sleeve, then he cleared his throat. Said, I'm just going down to the next town. Gotta find work, 'cause I'm broke. And old man, can you tell me where you're going, why you're doing like you do? He had pawned his teeth in the last town back in order to get a meal. His clothes were dirty and his voice was thin. He was looking for a better deal. The straw covered on his face, haze that covered his eyes, told of too many bars and too many towns, so too many deals passed him by. And old man,
Can you
tell me where you're going, why you're doing like you do? Then the sky clouded over and it looked like rain. Thought that he might get wet. So he asked me to stop and I let him out. Turned and he tipped his hat. And then as he was looking at me,
he was closing the door. He looked right over at me. Asked if I had a quarter to spare. He said he needed
a
bite to eat.
And old man, can you tell me where you're going, why you're doing like you do? Then the sky clouded over and it looked like rain. Oh, it didn't.
I gave him a quarter, he went on his way, another part, another town.
And I too went on my way as the rain was coming down. I made it to my friends out west, and I hope he did the same. Still I wonder about that next town, if that better deal ever came. And old man, can you tell me where you're going, why you're doing like you do? Old man, can you tell me where you're going, why you're doing like you do? Thank you. It's a good thing my son knows the words.
We're going to do Dancing Green Eyes next.
Oh, okay.
And we'd like to give a wave to our neighbors up in the yard. And a thank you to Wendy Cole, who was our host today. And I used to be a tenant of Wendy Cole, so some of you longtime viewers may recognize some of the backdrop here. This is no longer my abode, but I miss it, and I feel very comfortable here. So it's nice to see the neighbors to the left, the neighbors to the right, and the neighbors behind are moving cars around, but I don't expect them to do it for too much longer. And this is life in a live stream.
Gas is expensive. This is for my wife, Donna. Sometimes things happen when I least expect them, though I knew in my heart it was meant to be. And sometimes these things can lead to confusion, but I knew it was right when she first looked at me with those dancing green eyes. They caught my fancy, they laughed and they sparkled. They said, maybe we'll see. Set off by the light, they took me without warning, and oh, how I love those dancing green eyes. The first time we spent time together, I remember the places, the colors, the smells. And I remember the eyes and the promise they gave me, and I forgot about anything else. But those dancing green eyes, they caught my fancy, they laughed and they sparkled. They said, maybe we'll see. Set off by the lights, they took me without warning, and oh, how I love those dancing green eyes. Now we've been to the ocean, and we've been down the rivers, and we've been to the mountains to ski. And it makes me feel good when I think of those places, but it makes me feel fine when she looks at me with those dancing green eyes. They caught my fancy, they laughed and they sparkled. They said, maybe we'll see. Set off by the lights, they took me without warning, and oh, how I love those dancing green eyes.
Thank you, Dad. Thank you to our live audience here in this beautiful backyard that I used to spend a lot more time in, and it's so nice to have a few people here giving us some love and affection back at us. And it's so warm here, you wouldn't believe it. It's in the 70s, and that's very hot for us. It's so hot, people are starting to say things here like, it's too hot. It's just too hot. It's too hot. We live in the Pacific Northwest because we can't take the heat and people are burning up. But actually, I think it's early enough in the season. We're all feeling a little thrilled, although not one person is sitting in the sun here in our limited audience. I will tell you that. Everybody is seeking the shade. Anytime it gets above 72, it just gets a little too hot for people here. But I am rambling on, and it is time, of course, for the third song check, and just to see how we're doing. And without our producer David Pender Lofgren, we're not able to get comments unless maybe Nick's going to scroll through the comments here and he'll shout them out at me here. Nick, what's the word? Can you?
Yeah, let's see. We got.
Look for a good one there, Nick, while I say some other announcements here. The third song check, and there's somebody wrote to us and said, you used to have a trivia question. What happened to the trivia? And they're absolutely right. Something happened to the trivia, and we couldn't find it for a long time. We lost our box of trivia, but the trivia is back. And the question is, what Cat Stevens album has the song Father and Son? And part two of the question, what music brings you and your father closer together? So those are the two questions, one of a trivia nature, one of a personal nature, and you can put that in the comments there. Tell us about a little music you and your father enjoy together, and tell us what Cat Stevens' album has father and son. And let's see, what else am I going to tell you? Of course, there is a digital tip jar here, so if you're watching the show, please do make your way to the digital tip jar, and we'll take those digital tips and we'll pay this fantastic crew that is here in David's wake. And hey, I might take a little bit of that money too and take it down to get some real food at the real grocery store. So thank you for finding the PayPal and the Venmo. And what are they saying out there in comment land?
So
Kathy Wilson says, so sweet to watch you two play together. Jackie Wilson says, I'm in heaven when you smile. Henry St. Clair Worthman, my buddy in St. Louis. What's Henry telling us today? T for Tillerman. He's got that right. That is the correct answer to the trivia question. Although I'm looking forward to tomorrow scrolling through the comments and seeing what album the viewers but the mention of T for Tillerman. Well, I have to bring up a story of I've done a lot of house painting over the years to make money. When you learn to play guitar, you also learn to paint houses, and that facilitates you being a guitar player for the rest of your life. And my buddy, whose name I won't mention, he's of Dad's age. And so he was kicking around when T for Tillerman came out, and I remember he told me once, Blake, you don't understand. I mean, you'd have a date, and you take the date back to your place, and you put on T for the Tillerman. If you weren't getting lucky by the third song, you were getting lucky. These are the sorts of things we talk about when we're painting houses. Maybe not appropriate here for the family show, but I cannot think of T for the Tillerman without my painting boss telling me the power of that record for encouraging romantic experiences in the 70s. We're going to move right on with the show there. Unless we have one more comedy and one more queued up there. So David Penderlochran's watching the show with Al and Joan over there. I'm so glad you get to be together. Yes, our producer has 2 weeks off, and we have 2 to 3 to 5 or 6 people doing the job that usually David does on his own. Dad, as you told me once when you were playing St. Patrick's Day, you always opened up with 3 numbers. So I was thinking here after the third song check-in, we would sort of segue into some Irish songs, and you had top 3.
Well, we used to open with Mountain Tay.
Mm-hmm.
So I can do that.
And what were 2 and 3?
Little Beggar Man and something about whiskey.
It should hit us by the time we get there.
Yeah.
We can do Mountain Tay. Which one is that? Oh, a gallon for the butcher, a quart for Tom.
Yeah. Gather up the pots and the old tin cans, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney. A bottle for the butcher, a quart for Tom, a bottle for poor old Father John, to help his hymns and his prayers along in the hills of Connemara. Gather up the pots and the old tin cans, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney. Keep your eyes well peeled today, big tall men are on their way, whipping up the Mountain Tay in the hills of Connemara. Gather up the pots and the old tin cans, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney. Keep your eyes well peeled today, big tall men are on their way, searching for the Mountain Tay in the hills of Connemara. Gather up the pots and the old tin cans, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney. Gather up the pots and the old tin cans, the mash, the corn, the barley and the bran. Run like the devil from the excise man, keep the smoke from rising, Barney. I am a little beggar man, a beg, and I've been for 60 more in the court of Isle Grand. I beg from the Liffey way down to Sagoo. The name that I go by is Johnny McEldew. Of all the professions, for begging is the best, for when a man is tired, he can sit down and rest. Beg for supper, he's got nothing left to do but to run around the corner with his old rigadoo. Met a little flexy-haired girl one day. Good morning, little flexy-haired girl, I did say. Good morning, little beggar man, and how do you do? With your eggs and your tags and your old rigadoo. Buy a pair of leggings and a collar and a tie, and a nice young lady I will fetch by and by. Buy a pair of goggles and I'll colour them blue, and an old-fashioned lady I will make her too.
I slept in the barn way down to Kilbar, slept through the night and on through the dawn. Holes in the roof and the rain a-peeking through. Cats and the rats, they were playing peekaboo. Who should awaken but the woman of the house in her white spotted apron and her calico blouse? She began awaking and I said boo. Don't be afraid, ma'am, it's only Johnny Doo.
Over the road with me pack on me back, over the fields with me heavy sack. Toes in the shoes and me toes and people through singing skinny-rick-a-doodle. Now it's only Johnny Doo. I must be going to bed for it's getting late at night, and the fire's all raging, out goes the light. Now you've heard the story of me old rigadoo. It's go I and play with you, says old Johnny Doo.
I am a little beggarman, a begging. I have been through 60 more the court of Ilgrin. I beg from the Liffey way down to Sagoo. Name that I go by is Johnny McEldew. Of all the professions, the begging is the best, for when a man is tired he can sit down and rest. Begs for his supper, he's got nothing left to do but to run around the corner with his old rigadoo.
Nice.
We have our live audience seeking the shade out to the right, and I have 2 empty seats right in front of me, which kind of makes me feel very at home, actually. It reminds me of all the years of being on the road, and if you can't really give your heart out to the empty seats in front of you, you can't give your heart out, so you just do it. We were going to stay in that zone for one more, though, and I think it's come to me. The grass is growing, water flow, in a free and easy way. Just give me some of that grand old stuff made in your Galway Bay. Now peelers all from Donegal, Galway will each from 2. We'll give 'em a slip and we'll have a sip of the real old Mountain Dew. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day.
At the foot of the hill there's a neat little still where the smoke curls up to the sky. By the smoke and the smell you can plainly tell that there's whiskey brewing nearby. For it fills the air with odor rare and betwixt both me and you. When home you go, you can take a bowl or a bucket full of Mountain Dew. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day.
Now learned men who use the pen have wrote with praises high of that sweet poaching from Ireland's green, distilled from wheat and rye. All away with pills, it cures all ills, pagan, Christian, or Jew. Take off your coat and grease your throat with the real old Mountain Dew. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day. Idle-diddle-daddle-dum, 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 idle-day. Fresh fish. That is the powerful 3 numbers that Mountain Time would open up the shows with at the Irish bars in Seattle when I was too young to know what was happening, but soaking it all in nonetheless at rehearsals. And I believe there is a rehearsal tape of my dad's band, the Mountain Time Band, playing. They're rehearsing and recording it so they could listen back, I suppose. And my 5-year-old self says,
Dad, I want something to eat.
And Dad says, we're rehearsing.
Later, Robert. Okay, you got the list.
I got the list. Yeah, well, we're gonna do a party favorite, the Scotsman.
Oh, Robert didn't learn this when he was 5.
7
Could
or 8
have been,
maybe.
yeah. Could have been that.
Who did you learn it from?
I believe Brian Bowers.
Okay.
The auto harp player.
Yeah. Yeah, he lives just in Skagit County. We're actually talking about Brian playing a show at Boundary Bay Brewery this summer, and that gives me a chance to let you know I will be back at Boundary. We are going to have a real show with a real audience. Happy Hour is back the 1st of July. We'll be down at Boundary Bay, but we're going to keep the live streams going on Sundays because they are so much fun, and they're a little different nature than actually doing a show in a pub. So keep your eye out for Brian Bowers, date undecided, and come down if you're nearby to Boundary Bay the 1st of July. And this is my chance to have my father here with me on Father's Day singing the songs of my youth.
Terry Borneman told me this was a true story. A Scotsman walked out on the road one evening fair. One could tell by the way he walked that he drunk more than his share. He stumbled round until he could no longer keep his feet. Then he stumbled off into the grass to sleep beside the street. Ring-ding-diddle-diddle-I-D-O, ring-da-diddly-I-O. He stumbled off into the grass to sleep beside the street. About this time 2 young and lovely girls just happened by. One says to the other with a twinkle in her eye, "Come see yon sleeping Scotsman so strong and handsome built. I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath the kilt. Ring-ding-diddle-diddle-I-D-O, ring-da-diddly-I-O. I wonder if it's true what they don't wear beneath the kilt." They crept up on that sleeping Scotsman quiet as could be, lifted up his kilt about an inch so they could see. And there for them to view beneath his Scottish skirt was nothing more than God had blessed him with upon his birth. Ring-ding-diddle-diddle-I-D-O, ring-da-diddly-I-O, was nothing more than God had blessed him with upon his birth. They marveled for a moment, then one said, "We must be gone. Let's leave a present for our friend before we move along." As a gift they left a blue silk ribbon tied into a bow. Around the bonny star that Scott's kilt did lift and show. Ring-ding-diddle-diddle-I-D-O, ring-da-diddly-I-O. Around the bonny star that Scott's kilt did lift and show. Now the Scotsman woke to nature's call and stumbled toward the trees, lifted up his kilt and then he gawks at what he sees. And in a startled voice he says, but what before his eyes? "Hock, lad, I don't know where you been, but I see you won first prize." Ring-ding-diddle-diddle-I-D-O, ring-da-diddly-I-O. "Hock, lad, I don't know where you been, but I see you won first prize." Thanks, Terry.
Well, I thought that we would segue there into a song that seems so natural to play today on the day that Kim recommended we drink our father's favorite drink for Father's Day, which means we're having a little whiskey on a Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He sits on the... Oh, this has got a chorus to it. We have some willing participants, I believe, that help with the chorus.
They look willing.
Yep. Chorus goes like this. Come day, go day, wishing me hard it was Sunday. Drinking buttermilk all the week, whiskey on a Sunday. Now we can all try that. Come day, go day, wishing me hard it was Sunday. Drinking buttermilk all the week, whiskey on a Sunday. I'm sure you were fine, because we'll hear you. He sits on the corner of Beggar's Bush, astride of an old packing crate, and the dolls on the end of the plank were dancing as he sang with a smile on his face. Come day, go day, wishing me hard it was Sunday. Drink buttermilk all the week, whiskey on a Sunday. His tired old hands from the wooden beams and the puppets, they danced up and down. A far better show you ever did see than the finest theater in town. Come day, go day, wishing me hard it was Sunday. Drinking buttermilk all the week,
whiskey on a Sunday.
But in 1902, old Step Davy died. His song, it was heard no more. The 3 dancing dolls in the dustbin were thrown, and the plank went to mend the back door. Come day, go day, wishing me hard it was Sunday. Drinking buttermilk all the week, whiskey on a Sunday. You want to play one? Guitar lessons paid off. But on some stormy night, if you're passing that way, with the wind blowing up from the sea, you can still hear the song of old Step Davy as he sings to his dancing dolls 3. Come day, go day, wishing me hard it was Sunday. Drinking buttermilk all the week, whiskey on a Sunday again. Come day, go day, wishing me hard it was Sunday. Drinking buttermilk all the week, whiskey on a Sunday. Thank you.
Well, I was traveling once and playing gigs in the Northeast, and I guess well, what can I say? I've always been hungry to get in on the show, no matter what the show may be. And there was a little Irish bar in Northampton, Mass, and they were playing ballads, and they started doing this tune here. And they finished it, and there weren't many people around or anything. I wasn't totally overstepping, but I said, "You missed a few verses." And I sang a few verses, and they said, "Cool. We never heard those ones before." It was a positive experience, and I wouldn't have been invited to the after party like I was if I hadn't have known those verses that I'd learned from my father here on the left.
What song are we doing?
Yeah, good question there, for sure. That could apply to any number of songs.
Yeah.
Come single bell and bow, and to me pay attention. Don't ever fall in love, it's the devil's own invention. For once I fell in love with the maiden so bewitching, Miss Henrietta Bell out of Captain Kelly's kitchen. With me tooraloorala, tooralooraladdie, with me tooraloorala, tooralooraladdie. At the age of 17, I was tied up to a grocer, not far from Stevens Green, where Miss Bell for tea would go, sir. Her manners were so free, she set me heart a-twitchin' when she invited me to a hoolie in the kitchen. With me tooraloorala, tooralooraladdie, with me tooraloorala, tooralooraladdie. Well, next Sunday being the day we were to have a flare-up, I dressed myself quite gay, and I greased and oiled me hair up. The captain had no wife, and he had gone out fishing, so we kicked up high life down below stairs in the kitchen. With me tooraloorala, tooralooraladdie, with me tooraloorala, tooralooraladdie.
Just as the clock struck 6, we sat down at the table. I drank them hot pan.
She fed me punch and tea, and I drank while I was able. Whoops, she fed me tea and cakes. She certainly did. Let's take it from the top there now. Just as
the clock struck
6, we sat down at the table. She handed tea and cakes, and I ate while I was able.
We
Drank
arms around her
tea
waist,
till his sides they were a-stitching, and the hours passed quickly by as we courting in the kitchen with me tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-la-laddie with me tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-la-laddie with
me arms around her waist. She slyly hinted marriage. To the door in dreadful haste came Captain Kelly's carriage. Her looks told me full well at that moment she was wishing that I'd go straight to hell or somewhere far from that kitchen with me
tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-laddie with me tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-laddie.
Well, she flew up off me knees, full 5 feet up or higher, and over head and heels threw me slap into the fire. Me new repealer's coat that I bought from Mr. Mitchell with a 30-shilling note went to blazes in the kitchen with me tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-laddie with me tooraloo-la.
Tooraloo-laddie. Well, I grieved to see me duds all smeared with soot and ashes when a tub of dirty suds right in my face she dashes. As I lay on the floor and the water kept a-pitching, the footman broke the door and marched right into the kitchen with me tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-laddie with me tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-laddie.
When the captain came downstairs, sure he seen me situation. In spite of all me prayers, I was marched off to the station. She said I'd robbed the house, in spite of all her screeching. And I got 6 months hard for me courting in the kitchen with me
tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-laddie with me tooraloo-la. Tooraloo-laddie. Well, I'm feeling pretty good. Thanks, everybody, for being with us here on this Father's Day. And I believe we have a sea shanty next on our list, which I actually had a dream about a sailing boat. And I can't remember it at all, but I do know when I was a kid, Dad would take me down to the Wawona, which was a...
It was a schooner. It was a... They ferried lumber. It was a lumber schooner. It also had been a fishing boat, and it was moored in Kirkland, and we put on shanty festivals there years ago.
And there were
now the Wawona is no more.
The Wawona is no more.
Yeah, they tried to. It was too expensive to rebuild it.
It will go to sea no more.
No more.
What song is that? It'll go to sea no more.
That's the song. Go to sea no more.
And who sings that one?
I don't remember.
We don't sing that one. Well, we could, but we don't because we can't right now.
No, but we're going to do a participation one where you sing the last 3 syllables of each line.
Even if you're at home in St. Louis or in Guelph, Ontario, or in Buffalo, or
especially if in Maine.
Especially if you're in Maine, you'd be doing the last 3 syllables.
And this is a capstan shanty, which means that the sailors would be pushing the capstan. And so, you either pulled something or you pushed it. And this is a pushing song. And they were like raising an anchor or lifting a sail, something like that. 'Twas a cold and frosty morning in December. When all of me money it was spent. Where it went to, Lord, I can't remember. So down to the shipping office went. And Paddy lay back. Take in your slack.
Take a turn around the capstan. Heave a paw. About ship stations, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn.
Now that year there was a great demand for sailors. For the colonies and for Frisco and for France. And I shipped aboard a limey bark, the Hotspur. Got paralytic drunk on my advance.
And Paddy lay back.
Take in your slack.
Take a turn around the capstan. Heave a paw. About ship stations, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn.
Well, I woke up in the morning stiff and sore.
Stiff and sore.
I knew that I was outward bound again.
Bound again.
And I heard a voice a-bawling at the door.
The door.
Lay after me in answer to your name.
To your name.
And Paddy lay back.
Paddy lay back.
Take in your slack.
Take in your slack.
Take
a turn around the capstan. Heave a pawl. Heave a pawl.
About
ship stations, boys, be handy. Be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn.
Well, 'twas on the quarter deck where I first saw 'em.
First saw 'em.
Such an ugly bunch you never seen before.
Seen before.
There was a bum and a stiff from every quarter.
Every quarter.
They made me poor old heart feel sick and sore.
Sick and sore.
And Paddy lay back.
Paddy lay back.
Take in your slack.
Take in your slack.
Take a turn around the capstan. Heave a pawl.
Heave a pawl. About ship stations, boys, be handy. We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn.
Now there were Spaniards and Dutchmen and Roosians.
And Roosians.
And Johnny Carapos just across from France.
Across from France.
But none of 'em could speak a word of English.
Of English.
But answered to the name of Months Advance.
Months Advance.
And Paddy lay back.
Paddy lay back.
Take in your slack.
Take in your slack.
Take a turn around the capstan. Heave a pawl. Heave a pawl. About ship stations, boys, be handy.
Handy.
We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. Now I wished I wasn't a jolly sailor.
A sailor.
Along with Irish Kate a drinking beer.
Drinking beer.
And I thought about what lovely chaps were sailors.
We're sailors.
And with me flipper I wiped away a tear.
Away a tear and Paddy lay back. Paddy lay back.
Take in your slack.
Take in your slack.
Take a turn around the capstan. Heave a pawl. Heave a pawl. About ship stations, boys, be handy.
Be handy.
We're bound for Valparaiso around the Horn. Valparaiso around the Horn. Valparaiso is where they used to go to get bat guano.
And what would they do with the bat guano?
Oh, it's fertilizer.
They would fertilize.
Yeah.
Tobacco, maybe.
Well, something. Whatever needed to be fertilized.
My friends who actually sail tell me you would never do a shanty at that pace because it would be too much work to be hauling things at that pace. But we're not actually hauling, we're just singing, and we do it the way we do it. We're staying in sort of a we've shifted from a strictly Irish segment to more of a seafaring segment. And this tune here that I love, this tune, Johnny Todd. Do you know where you learned this song?
Probably from the Clancys. Learned a lot from the Clancys.
My friend Ruth Unger, she's the daughter of the great American fiddler Jay Unger. Somebody said to Ruth, you know, your father is a folk revivalist, but if you learned the music from your parents, you're just a folk singer. I learned it from you, so. Johnny Todd, he took the notion for to cross the ocean wide. But he left his fair young maiden waiting by the Liverpool tide. For a week she wept with sorrow, pulled her hair and wrung her hands, till she found another sailor walking by the Liverpool sands. Oh, young maiden, why are you weeping? Has your Johnny gone to sea? If you'll wed with me tomorrow, you will fair and handsome be. I'll buy you sheets and blankets, I'll buy you a wedding ring, I'll buy you a golden cradle for to rock the baby in. Johnny Todd came home from sailing across the ocean wide. but he found his fair and false one was another sailor's bride. So young men who go sailing for to fight the foreign foe, never leave your love like Johnny, marry her before you go. Marry her before you go.
Nice.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us here in this backyard, and the neighbors, and of course everybody here on this kitchen table that stretches all over the place, north, south, east, west. We gather here in this space, physical and metaphysical, here on Sundays, 5 to 7 Pacific time, and we're going to keep it rolling as we crawl out of COVID. We're starting to spend time together in spaces other than virtual, which feels really good, but we're loving this show we do on Sunday, so we're going to keep it rolling. Our hard-working producer has 2 well-earned weeks off, so next week we will not have David either, but we have a great folk singer here, songwriter from Bellingham called Steve Webb will be the special guest. And staying on a nautical theme, my father has a story for you. And I'm going to have a drop of whiskey that my friend Lewis Ledford gave to me. This is Bob Dylan's whiskey, and he hypes it enough that I don't need to, but it is good tasting whiskey. Heaven's Door whiskey. Lewis will be a guest, I believe it's the 18th of July. He was on for the Dylan Show, but he'll be back to do his own tunes on the 18th, which that show will also be in conjunction with the Mission Folk Festival. So it's pretty exciting to be thinking about that.
This is a family story, and it was a story I was telling my mother a number of years ago, and she laughed and said, "You should write that down." So, being a dutiful son, I did. It's about my Aunt Bernice and her husband Jack. I don't think Jack was her first husband. Bernice was, well, here's the story. In the summer of 1962, my family, with the exception of my brother Warner, who was in the U.S. Army in Germany, took a road trip to California. My father, mother, and sisters, Sarah and Nancy, and I were traveling in our 1962 red Ford Galaxy. This was the first and last Ford my father ever bought, but that's another story. As I was 15 at the time, I had a learner's permit to drive, and I marvel yet at my parents' confidence in allowing me to drive that red Ford at some pretty high speeds on what were by today's standards some pretty narrow roads. I do recall driving into the Los Angeles basin and stopping at the first opportunity to allow my father the stress of driving through that quagmire. The primary reasons for us to go to Los Angeles, aside from visiting Disneyland, were to see my mother's brother Tom, who lived in West Covina, and my mother's sister Bernice and her husband Jack McMean, who lived on a boat moored in Wilmington Harbor. We did have a wonderful visit with my Uncle Tom. He introduced us to a girlfriend. This was an interesting concept to us, coming from Minnesota, where all the adults we knew were either married or in the religious, and he took us for a ride to show us the Stack, a phenomenon where 4 or 6 freeways intersected. During the entire visit, he was able to keep a non-stop line of snappy patter. This, however, is Bernice and Jack's story. We arrived at the harbor in the morning. There was a locked gate, so my wonderful Aunt Bernice was there to greet us. Bernice was a wildly effusive, jubilant, loving person, and she was delighted to see us. Hugs and kisses abounded, and when we walked out onto the dock, we passed a somewhat derelict craft. Bernice stopped and said, "Warner, this is it. What do you think?" Now, my father was on this trip mostly because it was important to my mother. He also had a medical condition of which we were not fully cognizant. His reaction to Bernice was one of marginal tolerance, and upon reflection, it seems like this was a harbinger of the trip for Dad. To my adolescent mind, this entire interaction was very funny. A few berths further on held their boat. I don't remember the name, but they did have an official-looking piece of paper in a frame indicating that the yacht had previously been owned by Sebastian Cabot. This was impressive. The yacht itself was a pretty classy deal. There was some type of cabin forward, and the galley was comfortable, as I recall. but one of the most notable features was my aunt's medicine stash. Now, Bernice worked as a nurse, and I expect that she was conversant in any number of ailments, and she was also aware of modern chemical remedies. At one point, perhaps it was upon boarding, there was a request for an aspirin or something, and with her unique flair, Bernice walked over and threw open the doors to the cupboard. There were 2 or 3 4-foot shelves crammed with a variety of pillboxes and medicine bottles. This was not like anything we were used to in Minnesota. We later learned, or at least I realized, that Bernice and Jack actually lived on the boat, and this, I suppose, made it reasonable for their supplies. Shortly after we got all our things on board, we left. We were bound for Catalina Island, 26 miles away. I remember that from the song. Sometimes after we got through the breakwater, the seas began to roll, and I experienced that feeling of nausea commonly known as seasickness. But this soon passed without getting too serious. As I recall, it may have been about this time that the engine stopped. We had run out of gas. "This is no problem," said Uncle Jack. "We have another tank. I just have to switch it over." Switching to the other tank proved to be somewhat more complicated than it originally seemed. Jack had some trouble with the whole operation, and at one point he called out to my father, "Warner, you're an engineer. Why don't you fix it?" Even my adolescent mind sensed the irrationality of this question. My father's response was exactly appropriate. "Jack, it's your boat." This hardly fazed my uncle. "Well, sure it is, but I don't know what's wrong." So the two of them set about switching over to the second tank. Sometime during these machinations, Jack tried to start the engine with no success. Eventually, they did manage to get the tanks changed, and this time the engine did engage. However, during the earlier attempt, Jack had put the gear in reverse. So the engine fired up, the boat moved backward, causing the dinghy line to be caught up in the propeller. By the time anyone was aware of this complication, the dinghy overturned and filled with water. We attempted to upright the dinghy from the aft section of the yacht. This was not possible. The next try was to continue to motor with another line attached to the dinghy. However, with the propeller so fouled by the original dinghy line, combined with the weight of the water-filled overturned rowboat, it was impossible to maintain any sort of forward speed. So my uncle did the one thing that I will always remember. He went to his radio. I suppose it was some sort of a shortwave. And he called, "Mayday! Mayday!" I had never seen anyone actually do that. Outside of a movie or a television show, I had visions of the Coast Guard and Lloyd Bridges racing to our rescue. Instead, about a half an hour later, a salvage boat pulled up. Whether money changed hands or not, I don't remember, but they were able to upright the dinghy, and we were off again. We motored into Catalina Harbor, and there was one last mooring buoy for us. Jack may have reserved it, but I think we simply made it in the nick of time. The water in Catalina Harbor was crystal clear, and a person could see the bottom clearly through the depth was 20 to 30 feet. So my sister Sarah and I went swimming. We somehow didn't muster the courage to dive from the flying bridge, but we did dive off the stern. We tried to untangle the last of the dinghy rope from the propeller, but couldn't. So my aunt charmed the young men who were moored next to us, and they, with snorkeling equipment, were able to free the propeller. The rest of the evening was, as I recall, rather uneventful. I did get to sleep on the cushions at the stern of the boat. Later comparisons with my sisters verified that I had the best berth on the craft. But that's their story. The next morning there was a somber mood on the boat. Apparently my father either had some sort of seizure during the night, or he was simply not feeling well. The upshot of this was that my father, mother, and sister Nancy were all going back to the mainland via a much larger vessel, and they were leaving that morning. How or why Sarah and I stayed is lost somehow in the shroud of old memories. My recollection is that there were no hard feelings. Dad just simply was not going to stay. I believe there are times when I also exhibit my father's stoicism. So we watched them go, and it was fine. We then took off to explore the island. Sarah must have gone with my Aunt Bernice, as I recall spending the afternoon in the single company of my Uncle Jack. We went to the top of a hill that overlooks Catalina Harbor, and he regaled me with all kinds of stories, and I was having the time of my life. Later in town, he bought a new sailor's cap. It was blue and had a shiny black brim, the type that yachtsmen wore. His previous cap was of the same design, but it was white. he let me wear it. After dinner, the four of us went into town and saw the movie Cape Fear at the Avalon Ballroom. The famed ballroom had been converted into a movie theater. It seems a shame that we didn't get to see Glenn Miller or the Dorseys or even Lawrence Welk. But then again, I suppose I was happier seeing a thriller movie than waxing nostalgic. I was a target of mass advertising, and their aim was very good. That night I resumed my bunk at the stern. There was now plenty of space inside the boat, but I really enjoyed sleeping on the cushions, listening to the waves lapping against the boat and breathing the fresh air. The next morning came with a nearly impenetrable fog bank. We had an interesting breakfast, as I recall, leftover steak and orange juice. Then we departed for the mainland. As we left the harbor, the sea was very calm. It was almost like being on a mirror, except there was no reflection. We could only navigate using the compass. Uncle Jack and I sat in the flying bridge, and I was allowed to steer. "This is not a car," Jack said, as I would make instant corrections any time the compass needle strayed from the heading he had given me. "You have to make slow, easy adjustments to allow for the movement of the ocean." By this time the swells had begun to increase in size, and we found ourselves bobbing up and down with increased velocity. This made being on the flying bridge rather uncomfortable, so we climbed down and ran the controls from inside the cabin. After a period of time, 1 hour, 2 hours, the fog lifted and we found ourselves outside of the breakwater. The breakwater is a man-made barrier upon which the ocean waves are curbed and behind which water traffic can move in a more orderly, controlled fashion. At least that's what it seemed like to me. It was also quite a bit warmer in the breakwater, and there wasn't as much wind, so I took my shirt off. Now, a few days earlier, our family had been to the farmer's market in Los Angeles, where I had purchased a small tiki. At the time, there was a popular television show called Adventures in Paradise. The main character was a handsome man who spent a good deal of each segment bare-chested and sporting a tiki suspended around his neck. Tiki is a small figurine bearing a resemblance to the stone statues found on Easter Island. Now I was back on the flying bridge with my shirt off, wearing Uncle Jack's old yachting cap, proudly displaying my new acquired ornament. My uncle was beside me, adorned with his new yachting cap. He did have his shirt on. However, he had not gotten around to putting his dental bridge. He had no front teeth. I guess it was because it was more difficult for him to project. He leaned over to me and we passed a salvage vessel in the breakwater. "Ask him which way to San Pedro," Jack whispered to me. I gathered up all of my shirtless, tiki-sporting yachting cap bravado and hollered out at the man, who immediately responded with a howl of laughter that we were indeed in San Pedro Harbor. I gave my uncle a dirty look. Shortly after that, we arrived back at the berth assigned to Bernice and Jack's boat. Dad and Mother, along with Nancy, were waiting on the dock. Apparently, we were a couple of hours late. Our parting was brief. While I had had a grand adventure, I really don't believe my enthusiasm was shared by my parents. This was the last trip we took as a family to visit family.
Thank you. And we have a small audience here, but it is time, of course, as some people are suspecting, to play Stump the Band. And, when we were doing this solely to the live stream audience, we had great fun with callers. And last week in the rained out, were we rained out last week? It's hard to remember how it all comes together. We had a call-in requester. But here we are with a small live audience, and I gave them no warning whatsoever. And the warning that I could have given you a few songs back is that at this point right now, I'm going to call on you to give us a request. That request can be something we know. It can be something we don't know. And it could be something that you think we might know. And I really wish I'd given you a little bit of warning, but this looks like a more educated than normal crowd. And so we're just going to see what kind of requests come to the top of their mind with no warning at all. And then Dad and I will do our best to give you a blast of that request. Well, we'll start with Steve over there. I know I can count on Steve with no warning to step up to the plate. He looks so relaxed. It's his day off. And he's kind of in a Catalina Island kind of shirt, and so that makes me think of him. Steve, Nope, no, he's passing on that, and I fear that if I let you get away without a request, the next person is going to think they can get away with no request. So I'm a little concerned about the fate of Stump the Band today. I really am. This could just die a slow death. This could be actually the last time we even try to Stump the Band, because we feel like our confidence gets so shot that we never feel like we can ask again. So I don't know, Steve. Do you have something?
I remember a song by Tim O'Brien about a guy selling his vegetables as he came up the street pushing his cart.
Good request. Very good request. Very good request. Tim O'Brien, a song sung by Tim O'Brien about a guy pushing a cart of vegetables. Okay, we're going to send that request back to the research librarians in the back of our brains and see. This isn't the Chris Thiele show. We don't have a teleprompter here with the lyrics. We're either going to know it or we're going to blow it, and we're going to do it right in front of you and in front of all our gods and higher powers and anyone who is also at the kitchen table. Let's see if we can get a request from Rebecca over there. She's in the shade, and she's showing no enthusiasm for giving a request, but... Well, that would be all right. Rebecca says, I have a request, but it's too easy. I know you know it. She has requested Black is the color of my true love's hair.
She said Blackbird by the Beatles.
No, she didn't. No, she definitely said Black is the color of my true love's hair, which is a lovely song, and we could do that one, which makes me feel good. And that's what I heard anyways. Yeah. And we'll go with a third request there. And we'll go with Wendy's request. Wendy is our host today. She's gathered this crowd and has this beautiful garden here with the honeysuckle and the cherry and the grape and the rhododendron. There are some shows here that we did in front of the rhododendron that were just so lovely. Wendy, what can we play for you? Wendy's request is One Morning in May. Okay, we're gonna we are stumped on the Tim O'Brien. I think it's safe to say.
It's safe.
Safe. The best thing I could do is we could sing in Fair Dublin City, where the girls are all pretty, with Molly Malone, who had a cart of fish, not a cart of vegetables, but a cart of fish. I think that is close enough. We could go that direction. We did get a request for Blackbird, but by the time it reached to me, I thought the request must be for Black is the color of my true love's hair, and the third request,
One Morning in May, but I'm thinking, I don't know that one, but I know the, as I went walking one morning in May, I saw a fine couple making their way. One was a fair maid, a beauty I recall, and the other was a brave grenadier.
And the lark they sang melodious at the dawning of the day.
And the lark they sang melodious.
And the larks they sang melodious. And the larks they sang melodious at the dawning of the day.
Said the fair maid to the sailor, said the sailor to the fair maid, I must be going away.
I'm bound to the West Indies, and it's there I will stray. And I'm leaving my Nancy.
We're mixing up songs here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stump the Band. We were doing pretty good. Let's do the chorus again, and we'll bring it back around. And the larks they sang melodious. And the larks they sang melodious. And the larks they sang melodious at the dawning of the day. In the merry month of May, from my home I started, left the girls at home, nearly broken hearted. Saluted father dear, kissed me darling mother, drank a pint of beer, my grief and tears to smother. Off to reap the corn, to leave where I was born, to cut a stout black thorn, to banish ghosts and goblins, and a brand new pair of brogues. Rattled over the bogs, frightened all the dogs, on the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn her down the rocky road, and all the ways to Dublin. Whack-foot-al-dee-da. For Mullingar arrived, I thought it such a pity to be so.
Soon deprived of that fine city.
Yeah, that's Dublin, but we're going to do Mullingar right. In Mullingar that night, I rested limbs so weary, started by day. Spears, light and daisy, had a drop of the pure to keep me heart from sinking. That's the Paddy's cure. When he's off to drinking to see the lassies smile, laughing all the while at my curious star, would leave your heart a bubbling. And asked if I was hired, wages I required, till I was nearly tired on the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn it down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack for da. In Dublin next arrived, I thought it such a pity to be so soon deprived of view of that fine city. Went out for a stroll, all among the quality. We bundle it was stole in a neat locality. Something crossed my mind, then I looked behind. No bundle could I find on my sick bob, and inquired for the rogue. Told me Connick Brogue wasn't much in vogue on the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn it down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack for da. From there I got away, my spirits never ailing, landed on the quay as the ship was sailing. Captain at me roared, said that no room had he. When I jumped aboard, a cabin found for Paddy. Down among the pigs, played some hearty rigs, danced some funny jigs with the water around me bubbling, and off to Holyhead, wishing I was dead or better off instead on the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn it down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack for da. The boys of Liverpool, when we safety landed, called myself a fool. I could no longer stand it. Blood began to boil. Temper I was losing. Poor old Erin's Isle, they began abusing. Hurrah, me soul, says I, that my shillelagh flies. Some Galway boys came by and saw I was the hobbling. With a loud hooray, sent in the affray, and quickly cleared the way for the rocky road to Dublin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hunt the hare and turn it down the rocky road, all the way to Dublin. Whack for da. That was a journey, like it always is, that stumped the band. Well, we mentioned Uncle Tom in your story there, so I think now couldn't be any better than the one we're in to do Uncle Tom.
Oh, bless your heart. I think I'll do the whole version.
This is definitely the time to do the whole version. This is Dad's D28 that he plays, I believe. It's 67?
68.
68.
It's the same year as John Prine's.
And this is my Martin guitar that I had the restraint to not make his guitar look like this. I got my own to turn it into this different sort of vibe. And this is a 1978 D35. And I'm not sure you could play songs like these without guitars like these, but you could try.
Tom was the youngest of my mother's siblings, and one year she had just recently been divorced and moved from Minnesota to Seattle, Kirkland, and she also was going through cataract surgery, so she had these pop bottle glasses. And needless to say, her self-esteem was at a low point. And Tom came, and I believe it was at Christmas time, and he was no sooner in the door than they started bickering about something trivial, and I've never seen my mother as happy. I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom. I wish that you could hear him when he'd sing his song, where there was laughing and tears and crying and stories that lasted all night long. Oh, I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom. Laying in my bed on a hot Minnesota night, mosquitoes buzzing in my ears and watching the fireflies. And it's 4 a.m. and the phone rings, and it's Tom and he's a little tight, but he just
my Uncle Tom. I wish that you could hear him when he'd sing his song. Well, there was laughing and tears and crying and stories that lasted all night long. Oh, I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom.
A number of years later, Tom was in Independence, Missouri, and he fell in love. He decided to get married, and so he called me and said, I think I was the third choice. Would you come and be the best man? So I said, sure. So I flew to Independence, Missouri, and they were doing the bridal dinner, and I was supposed to say something. And my new Aunt Rosie said, as I was stumbling over all my words, she said, just shut up and sing the song. Then he'd come to town with his fine California tan. He'd have a kiss for all of the women and a hand for all the men. And something in his pocket for all of us kids, and then he'd just say, I love you, and I hope to come back again. Somehow before you knew it, he'd be gone. And I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom. I wish that you could hear him when he'd sing his song. Well, there was laughing and tears and crying and stories that lasted all night long. Oh, I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom. And a few years after that, Tom and Rosie were in San Francisco visiting family. And they went to bed. Tom got up to do the midnight stroll, came back to bed. Said, hold me, Rosie, I'm cold. And he passed. And an earthquake hit San Francisco. Now I'm a little older. I've done one or two things on my own. More than once I've found myself standing by the phone, feeling sad and feeling low and feeling all alone. And I remember the phone calls and the times that he'd come to town. And I just want to say I love you, Uncle Tom. And I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom. I wish that you could hear him when he'd sing his song. Well, there was laughing and tears and crying and stories that lasted all night long. Oh, I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom. I wish you had an uncle like my Uncle Tom. Thank you.
I recorded this song of my dad's on the record I made coming into, 5, 6, 7 years ago. My self-titled album, which I made a decision that has led to nothing but confusion. I decided to do a charming thing and abbreviate my name the way Robert Burns, the poet, abbreviated his name, and it just has led to a lot of confusion. When you change the spelling of Robert, it's very confusing to people. It's a word that people seem to understand. So I made a record called ROBT, Sarazin Blake. And then a few years later, I made one more record with ROBT, and now I'm back to RO. I've added the E and the R back in because I just think of it now as a folly of youth to think I could re-spell the name Robert. Sun was just breaking over the Montana Rockies, past Anaconda, headed back east. Coming into Butte, my backside was aching, though I've been welded right there to the seat. Finding a place in Butte, Montana at 5 a.m. isn't easy to do. But I saw the neon and with some trepidation figured that it just would have to do. And I was thinking, isn't it amazing what they're doing with plastics? If I had known better, I'd have thought it was wood. And the whole world's changing, and I know it scares you. I know you'd stop it if only you could. Sitting the edge.
She was sitting at the edge of the Formica counter, gazing at the blenders with a soulful blank stare. Her pantsuit was made of checked polyester. It set off her bulges, set off her white hair. She ordered some coffee, and when no one was watching, took out a pint from her oversized purse, poured out a strong one, and replaced the bottle, took a long pull, and let out a low curse.
And I was thinking, isn't it amazing what they're doing with plastics? If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought it was wood. And the whole world's changing, and I know it scares you. I know you'd stop it if only you could. My omelet cake was made with Velveeta. I wondered if the eggs had ever been laid. She got up from the counter, walked over to my table, carrying a photo of one of her better days. There were 4 people in that black and white photo, 2 in the uniform of the Army Air Corps, and 2 young women. I guess she was one. That was the night before they all went to war.
I see.
They talked to that night, and the years that came after, and the young man that never came home, and how all the good times were now mostly bad times, how she can't get over feeling alone. And I was thinking, isn't it amazing what they're doing with plastics? If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought it was wood. And the whole world's changing, and I know it scares you. I know you'd stop it if only you could.
And I watched her eyes as they moved so slowly from the counter to the floor and then over to me. And I tried to listen, but she wasn't quite talking. Shuffled back over to her counter seat. Back at the counter, she forgot about the coffee, just poured out another one, better than before. Took a long pull, and then told the waitress that nothing was worth a damn anymore. The waitress nodded and made some more coffee and wiped up a spill from off of the floor. So I got up from my table, she lay her head on the counter. I waved and she smiled, and I walked out the door, singing, isn't it amazing what they're doing with plastics? If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought it was wood. And the whole world's changing, and I know it scares you. I know you'd stop it if only you could. Can I do the last one?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Back on the road, leaving Butte, Montana. The sun was now full up in the sky. The Toyota bounced on the cracks in the pavement. I thought of her there, and I started to cry. Isn't it amazing what they're doing with plastics? If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought it was wood. And the whole world's changing, and I know it scares you. I know you'd stop it if only you could.
I know you'd stop it if only you could.
All right. I'm pretty well done playing.
We have a couple more songs for you. Thanks to everybody for being with us here on the special Father's Day show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
very nice.
to my father for being with me here at the kitchen table. Long-time listener, first-time performer here at the kitchen table. And making a very special day for us.
That's right. I haven't done this before.
Yeah, I guess I never invited you.
I know.
Sometimes you look down at your set list and realize every song you have left is in the key of C. Sometimes I do something about it, put on a capo. Thinking about doing that right now. I'm thinking about it. I think I will. I think we'll take it up a half step, just to take it to a slightly different zone. Oh, see what I mean? See what I mean? Lifts the mood a little bit. Dad and I have been doing this one a long time. A song called Old Pen. Old friend was a pen.
Old Pen was a friend of mine.
He used to
sit
live down by the square.
It's kind of a local monument. You know, you'd always find him there. He never caused anybody no trouble. Town folks just passed him by. Sometimes you'd hear him laughing to himself. Sometimes you'd see him cry. Well, us kids used to go to him and used to listen to his songs. Some of them were happy. Some were just plain long. He used to pick 'em out on an old guitar that he won once when he was at sea. And I still remember all the words Old Pen spoke to me. He said, "Son, listen to me. Don't you go telling no lies. They'll get you in deep trouble. Follow you like flies. Said, son, watch where you're walking. Don't be afraid to lose. Put your memories in your traveling bag and miles upon your shoes." Well, the miles will teach you about the people and the differences in their ways. But don't walk too fast on down the road that you forget about the summer days. And don't walk too fast and don't walk too slow and don't ever forget your name. Don't ever laugh at a man when you see him down, boy. Someday you may have to play his game. Said, "Son, listen to me. Don't you go telling no lies. They'll get you in deep trouble. Follow you like flies. Said, son, watch where you're walking. Don't be afraid to lose. Put your memories in your traveling bag and miles upon your shoes. Put your memories in your traveling bag
and miles upon your shoes." Well, Old Pen's place is empty now. I think he's gone to his reward. I still remember all the songs he sang. I even know the chords. As I sit here on this roadside, on the way to where I've been, I got his memories in my traveling bag and miles on my shoes. He said, "Son, listen to me. Don't you go telling no lies. They'll get you in deep trouble. Follow you like flies. Said, son, watch where you're walking. Don't be afraid to lose. Put your memories in your traveling bag and miles upon your shoes. Put your memories in your traveling bag and miles upon your shoes. Put your memories in your traveling bags and miles upon your shoes."
Thank you.
That's my father, Peter Blake. Thank you, everybody. I got one more little wrap up. Well, first we have to have a few announcements here at the end of the show. Thanks to everybody who's participating and sharing the beverages of this series here. And thanks.
6:30.
That's all right.
Oh, that's okay. All right.
Yeah. Thanks to Kim for putting the beverages together. I heard from her earlier today. She said, "Robert, we got to start telling people what the beverage is for the following week. We can't just tell them mid-show. People don't have liquor cabinets suitable for this sort of situation. So next week we'll be having mojitos. Get your act together, everybody. That takes a lot of ingredients. And then on the 4th of July, we'll be broadcasting from Steve and Kathy's. If you don't know Steve and Kathy, might be a good time to find their comments in the comment land and become their friend. Because 4th of July will be at their place. And you're not invited yet. You know what I mean? And we're going to be drinking mint juleps. So that's two. Next week, mojitos, we will be in the lettered streets. And then 4th of July will be somewhere south of town. And what else? Oh, yeah, we do have... So July is pretty much sorted out with backyards. But if you would like to host the kitchen table in your backyard in August, please drop a line to me directly. Oh, I might miss it if it's in the comments. But be happy to hear from you. We have a few open Sundays in August, and we're going to keep this going outdoors through September. And I got a few more announcements. What do I have? Oh, of course. Don't forget to make your way over to the digital tip jar there, Robert Sarazin Blake, PayPal or the Venmo, and put a few tips in the jar for the crew, myself, and who knows, maybe. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to my dad, Peter Blake, for being on the show. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to my dad, Peter Blake, for being on the show. For being here. Thanks to my dad, Peter Blake, for being on the show. Well, it's great to see you, because we thought you were dead. Did you come back to life? Did you get out of your bed? It's great to see you. Was that your ghost? We thought you were gone. Burnt toast, it's great to see you. Whisper nothing, sing softly on your ear. Try not to cut short the moment that's here. Shadow it might be, feeling's clear. I couldn't ask for anything more. It's all about the times we share. It's all about the times we share. It's great to see you. Are you gonna stay? Are you here for the long night? Are you leaving at the break of day? It's great to see you. Yeah, it's true. It's great to see you. It's great to be near you. It's all about the times we share. It's all about the times we share. Thanks to our wonderful crew who has picked up where David Penderlofgren left off. We got Nick over there and Connor over there. If you're in the town of Bellingham and you want to learn to play some music, I suggest you go over to BellinghamMusic.com. Bellingham School of Music. They do music lessons over there. You can record your band there. They got it all going on over there. And if you're looking for a good time listening to music, I say you check out a band called Triple Mood. That's Connor's band. Check out Triple Mood. And thanks to Wendy for having us. Thanks to the neighbors for sticking with us and sending us the internet. Thanks to my dad. Thanks to my stepmother. Thanks to my partner. And thanks to my little daughter over there who's somewhere. Oh, my goodness. There she is. My first Father's Day. It's all about the times we share. It's all about the times we share. We'll see you next Sunday. Thanks, everybody. It's all about the times we share. Thank you, everybody.